Hello friends, in today's video we will be discussing about another topic from the Orbin's Histology, which is a book for the dental histology. This topic is development of face and oral cavity. So let's get started. First of all, there are the facial clefts. Facial clefts are really common in genetic malformations, and these comes as the second most common genetic malformation in the child. It is actually not just a genetic but also is occurred by the involvement of several factors during the pregnancy. So, increase in the clefting rate have been associated with children born to epileptic mother undergoing phenytoin therapy. Phenytoin therapy is a really big factor, and another factor is the smoking cigarette also by the mother of the child is also a really big factor in causing the birth defects. In the later case of the embryonic effect are thought to result from the hypoxia. Cleft involving only the secondary palate constitute after cleft involving the primary palate, the second most frequent facial malformation in humans. Also, the new evidence regarding the apparent role of epithelial mesenchymal interaction. This is really important because researches are going on, and the primary connection between the epithelial mesenchymal interaction via the mesenchymal cell process meshwork is seen to be somewhat connective to the phenomena of having a connection between clefts and the limb defects. The second part in this is the hemifacial microsomia. Hemifacial microsomia is actually something which is connected with the malformation involving half of the face and most importantly the jawbone and the related structures. The term hemifacial microsomia is used to describe the malformation involving the underdevelopment and other abnormalities of the temporomandibular joint, external middle ear, and other structures of the relatable region, such as parotid gland and the muscle of mastication and even jaws. As a group, these malformations constitute the third most common group of major craniofacial malformations, after the two major groups of facial cleft. Somewhat similar malformations have resulted from inadvertent use of the acne drug retinoic acid. So, retinoic acid has been always avoided in a pregnant women because excessive use or the long term use of the retinoic acid can cause the malformation like hemifacial microsomia in the unborn child. Malformations which are similar to the hemifacial microsomia occurred in the fetuses of women who had taken the drug thalidomide. Thalidomide is a drug which is mostly given in a cancer therapy, and also this cancer therapy. So this drug uh, is nowadays used in a cancer therapy, but in previous days or in past it was used to avoid the nausea and vomiting in a pregnant women. So, but later on it was seen that it was the cause of this birth defect known as hemifacial microsomia. Now comes the Treacher-Collins syndrome. The Treacher-Collins syndrome, which is also known as mandibulofacial dystosis, is an inherited disorder that results from the action of a dominant gene and may be almost as common as hemifacial microsomia. So, it is a genetic defect. It occurs due to the inheritance of certain kind of dominant gene. The syndrome consists of underdevelopment of the tissues derived from the maxillary, mandibular, and hyoid prominences. So, maxillary, mandibular, and hyoid prominences are specially underdeveloped in this. So, it is really important that you should know about the Treacher-Collins syndrome because it is a frequently asked question, and you should be at least knowing the basic of this syndrome So mandibulofacial dystosis, that means mandible will be involved, face will be involved, and dystosis means decrease in the function and excessively change in the shape and size of the particular bone or the structure. It is an inherited disorder. First of all, this is really important that it is an inherited disorder due to the dominant gene inheritance. Secondly, in this it is as common as hemifacial microsomia. Hemifacial microsomia was the third most common craniofacial defect, and Treacher-Collins syndrome will also be comparatively equal. Then syndrome consists of the underdevelopment of the tissues derived from the maxillary, mandibular and hyoid prominences. So whatever tissues are derived from the maxillary prominences, mandibular prominences, hyoid prominences, that will be underdeveloped. That means the teeth structure, alveolar bone structure, tongue structure, uh, oral, overall oral cavity and the hyoid bone related structures will be really of smaller sizes or underdeveloped. The external middle and inner ear are often defective, and the cleft of the secondary palate are found in about one third of the cases. So, cleft palate is also associated in this Treacher-Collins syndrome. Then comes the labial pits. Labial pits are the small pits may persist on either side of the midline of the lower lip. These are actually caused due to the failure of embryonic labial pit closure. So, nothing much was given about this in the book, and it was basically due to the failure of the closure of the pits which are present during the development of the embryo. So at that time the kind of openings which are present are not closed after during the completion of the formation of a child. So at that time, if these kind of defects are present, then they will be of course present after the birth as well. Then comes the lingual anomaly. The median rhomboid glossitis, an innocuous red rhomboidal smooth zone of the tongue in the midline in front of the foramen and cecum. So over the tongue, the dorsal side of the tongue, there is present the foramen cecum, which is present near the base of the tongue. The foramen cecum is really important landmark, because in further explanation of the disease or the location of the disease will also be done in the comparison to the location of this foramen. So this is a really important landmark. So foramen this lingual anomalies are mostly present around this, if whether it is in front of the or the along with this foramen cecum, and is considered as the result of persistence of tuberculum impar. The lack of fusion between the two lateral lingual prominences may produce a bifid tongue. So, bifid tongues mean the tongue is split into the two parts. So, these kind of tongue will be resulted by this uh, failure of the fusion of the lateral lingual prominences. The thyroid tissue may also be present at the end or the base of the tongue, which is known as thyroglossal anomaly of the tongue, or you can also say it as a thyroglossal cyst. So in this, basically the thyroglossal cyst is something where thyroid gland is attached or present in a base of the tongue, so it will be visible if the tongue is protruded, and this is really a malposition of the thyroid gland, and it causes a lot of difficulty in swallowing and must be treated by the time. Now comes the development cyst. So Developmental cysts are the epithelial rests in lines of union of facial or oral prominences or from epithelial organs. Mostly the developmental cyst arises from the epithelial rest in lines of union. Wherever the two attachment occurs, at that point the epithelial rests are present. Due to these rests, the cyst formation can occur. Example of this cyst could be vestigial nasopalatine duct cyst may give rise to cyst lined with epithelium. Brachial cleft cervical cyst. Brachial clefts are also known as cervical cyst or fistulas may arise from the rest of epithelium in the visceral arch area. The thyroglossal duct cyst may occur at any place along the course of the duct, usually at the midline. Cyst may arise from epithelial rest after the fusion of the medial maxillary and lateral nasal prominences. That is, cyst may arise from epithelial rests after the fusion, which I have told you earlier also, wherever the fusion or the union of two parts which are meant to be united in the later stage of the birth, they are known as to be consisting of epithelial rests. So cyst may arise from epithelial rests after the fusion of medial maxillary and lateral nasal prominences. They are known as globulomaxillary cyst, and globulomaxillary cyst is also really important topic. Most of the time they will ask you about this because it is really common and are lined with pseudostratified columnar epithelium and squamous epithelium. So globulomaxillary cysts are the cyst which is present due to the epithelial rest present at the fusion of medial, that is the middle portion, maxillary, that is the maxillary part, and the lateral nasal prominences, that is sideways. Okay, so medial, maxillary, and lateral prominences of the nose or the nasal part. Now, anterior palatine cyst. Anterior palatine cysts are present or situated in the midline of the maxillary alveolar prominences. Maxillary alveolar prominences, that is alveolar bone prominences. At this point, the midline cyst will be present. So, it is a really important landmark for the anterior palatine cyst. First of all, it is the palatine cyst, so of course it will be in relation to the palate. Then it is an anterior palatine cyst, so of course it will be in relation to the palatal area in the front. And then it is a maxillary cyst. Definitely it will be a maxillary cyst because palate is in maxilla, and the important landmark is it is present at the alveolar prominences at the midline. So whenever a cyst is noticed at the midline or of the maxilla, which is in relation to the palate and also in relation to the maxillary teeth, it will be indicated that it can be indicated that it would be anterior palatine cyst. Now comes the nasolabial cyst. The nasolabial cyst, we can definitely be indicated by this word that it will be in relation to the nasal cavity and the labial side. So let's study about this. Originating in the base of the wing of the nose and bulging into the nasal and oral vestibule and the root of the upper lip, sometimes causing a flat depression on the anterior surface of the alveolar prominences, are also explained as originating from the epithelial remnants of the cleft lip line. So this cyst will be related to the nasolabial part. It will be nasal as well as labial. So the cyst will be attached or persuaded towards the nasal cavity, as well as towards the outer part of the maxilla in relation to the vestibule of the upper lip, whereas in anterior palatine cyst it was really attached or in relation to the palate, not the nasal cavity. So you can differentiate into these two cysts by the fact that anterior palatine cyst will be in relation to the palate. Of course, it will be an midline cyst, so it could be seen as a similar to the nasolabial cyst, but nasolabial cyst will be more into the vestibule area of the upper lip and will be extended towards the nasal cavity as well. The malformation in the development of head may indicate the defective formation in the heart, as the spiral septum which divides the uh, conus cordis and truncus arteriosus is derived from neural crest. Okay, so this was all about the development of the oral cavity and the development or the facial defects of the oral cavity. So we can be easily be introduced about these topics, and if you want to know anything in detail we can make a separate video regarding that, and it will be explained in a better way in that particular video. Thank you.